It's time to talk about The Bad Batch Season 3. Now that the finale has come out this week, The Bad Batch show has come to a close, and honestly, it is so bittersweet to see it go. The Bad Batch was one of those shows that I got to look forward to for the past few years and not be disappointed after the show ended. I've always seen The Bad Batch as an extension to the Clone Wars show, which was the entire reason that I got into Star Wars when I was younger. This season of The Bad Batch in particular has been brilliant and brought a satisfying close to each of the characters in the crew. Let's begin by acknowledging the amazing character development Crosshair has gotten throughout the 3 seasons. I feel like there was so much character development for Crosshair that there wasn't any more left to spread to the other members of the Bad Batch because, oh boy, did Crosshair steal the show. Crosshair betrays his brothers in Season 1 and stays loyal to the Empire, but as the episodes go on, he slowly starts to realize that the Empire isn't worth being loyal to anymore. I feel like the only reason he stays with the Empire at some points is literally just to spite his brothers. This man sees Kamino, his home, get bombarded into smithereens and still decides to stay loyal to the Empire. Even when he has a clear opportunity to defect and rejoin his brothers, it takes an absolute prick of a lieutenant to finally push Crosshair over the edge and defect from the Empire. But this was just seasons 1 and 2. There was a whole third and final season to put the icing on the cake with his character and give him the redemption we've all been waiting for, and that is exactly what this season did. Thanks to Omega's optimism, Crosshair is convinced that there is still a place for him with his brothers and that he still has a purpose in this world. Speaking of Omega's optimism, let's talk about how she has developed throughout the seasons. I feel like Omega had the same issue that Ahsoka had at the beginning of the Clone Wars, being how annoying they both came across at the beginning of their respective character arcs. While Ahsoka dramatically changed throughout the seasons of the Clone Wars, I feel like Omega has had her respective changes while at the same time staying the same, but not in a bad way. She never lost that optimism that she first had in Season 1. The most prominent change with Omega was her relationship with her crew, which by Season 3 really started to feel like a family. I like how Omega keeps her optimistic personality, and I feel like her optimism really helped get the crew out of some rough spots by acting as a sort of a mediator. She acts like this to ease the tension between the crew and Crosshair, and she does it again to break up the fight with Ventress. She sees the best in everyone, whether that be to her advantage or disadvantage, but in this season her personality has contributed greatly to the crew. She becomes someone who is no longer just a young, helpless clone, but has developed into a great leader who is able to successfully lead the other children out of Tantis to safety. It appears that she has also become an excellent gambler, which I don't know if that is a good thing or a bad thing, especially because she could develop a terrible gambling addiction and start going insane. We'll see how that plays out, I guess. The time jump at the end of the finale shows how Omega is all grown up and ready to go out into the galaxy and join the rebellion as a pilot. The only clone we see with her in the scene is Hunter, who has gotten pretty old with his accelerated aging. And if you think about it, it's kind of weird because Omega is actually older than the other Bad Batch members, but she appears younger because she doesn't have the accelerated aging that they all do. And this makes me wonder how the rest of the crew is doing at this point in time and how much has happened up to this point. I think it is safe to say that they will be unbothered by the Empire and Pabu because Grand Admiral Tarkin diverted all the resources from Project Necromancer to Project Stardust, which was for the development of the Death Star. This effectively shut down everything Hemlock was working for, and is the reason that Palpatine didn't have a proper vessel to transfer his essence to in The Rise of Skywalker, which is why he was so weak. Omega and the Bad Batch were only in danger because of how essential Omega was to Project Necromancer. And since that has been shut down, there will be no need for the Empire to waste their resources and track them down. There were numerous characters this season that I really wish had more character development. Firstly, Emory. Emory had a great arc this season, starting the season as someone who is loyal to the Empire and dedicated to the mission of Tantis, to someone who sees the wrongs the Empire is doing at this facility and decides to defect. I wish we got a bit more backstory for her because all we know was that she was not on Kamino during the Clone Wars and was chosen by Hemlock to work at Tantis after the war. Also, I've seen some people on social media shipping Emory and Echo. Personally, I don't know how to feel about that because that is incest, but it sort of seemed to lean that way in the show, which is kind of interesting. Chat, what do we think about this? Let me know in the comments down below. A major problem I have with each of the Bad Batch seasons is how much the clone commandos have gotten nerfed. The game Republic Commando portrays clone commandos as clones who are the most elite and capable out of all of the clones. In these seasons, all they do is guard Tantis, and they are never that much of a threat to anyone. Another character I feel like missed out on any type of character development was Scorch. He was such a one-dimensional character in this show, and we never learn about his motives or what happened to the rest of the Delta Squad. Hell, we never even see him with his helmet off. There is no humanity shown to him or any of the other troopers at Tantis. His death in the finale was brief, and the only people who might feel some sort of emotion to his death are the people who played Republic Commando. Anyone else who watches this show will only see this clone as another generic bad guy who gets taken down by the good guys. The disrespect to the clone commandos is unreal. The only reason I could come up with for why the clone commandos are utilized the way they are is because the Empire is trying to phase out clone troopers, and their only use now is to guard high value locations and personnel. Hopefully we can get a show about the clone underground, and maybe we'll see clone commandos defect and we could see them utilize their full potential as elite soldiers. There was one Imperial trooper in particular that I thought they did a great job with in the show, and that was Commander Wolffe. Those 2 episodes with him were phenomenal. They display his excellent leadership capabilities and how he still values the lives of his clone brothers he fought besides over the Empire he serves. I really thought we would see him join Rex in this show and that there would be a massive clone uprising, but I think they're potentially saving that for a future show about Rex and the clone underground. I appreciate the callback to the Clone Wars movie when we find out that the clone underground established their base on the Teth Monastery, the same location where they fought the Separatists in the movie. It gives great imagery of how the base was used at the start of the Clone Wars and is now being used again at the end of it. There's a lot of great imagery in this show that is similar to that, like how in the finale we see a Star Destroyer escorted by 2 Venators. This is the first time we get to see these ships together in Star Wars, and it shows how the Empire is slowly phasing out everything from the Republic. The scene where Crosshair places the helmets of the deceased clone troopers on the ice planet, the sequence of events where Senator Tucci, who was with the Republic, meeting with Senator Avi Singh, who was with the Separatists to form a secret alliance that will later become the Rebellion. When we see that Ventress has become a good guy compared to when we last saw her at the beginning of the Clone Wars, I'm sure there is a lot of other imagery that I didn't include here that y'all guys picked up on, but this stood out to me the most. It was sad seeing many of the clones die on Teth, especially Namek and Fireball. These 2 clones were introduced in Season 2, but were memorable because of their easily distinguishable and cool armor and also their unique personalities. They seem to be more skilled and experienced than the average clone. All of the clones of the Teth base were very distinguishable with their uniquely colored and patterned armor. I think the clone with the coolest armor though was the one that we saw with the purple painted armor, but that's just me though. Let me know what y'all's favorite clone was in the comments, but I really like purple, it's my favorite color, so of course I gotta go that way. Speaking of clones, who were those powerful new clones that we saw in the finale? I feel like nobody called this out, but you could see Hemlock holding the schematics for these clones when he observes them at the start of episode 10. We didn't get any explanation for who they were or how they were created. I kind of like this though, because it added more mystery to the show and maybe it'll be explained in future projects Disney decides to make. I remember a lot of people on the internet thinking that the clone assassin was going to be Tech, but he died and they didn't take his helmet off to reveal who he is. That's really strange, but it's a weird thing that they went with, but it just kind of happens. But another thing I saw was that one of the super clones, I guess we could call them that, had a helmet that sort of resembled Tech's helmet. And I don't know if that's just like a coincidence or something, or if the writers are just subtly doing that, but that's kind of interesting as well. But I'm glad that they did not bring Tech back this season, because that would have demeaned his death at the end of season 2, which was a great ending for his character and a very emotional point of the show. Continuing about Tech's death and how they treated it in season 3, I think they did an alright job with how the Bad Batch handled it. I like how Tech's broken glasses are symbolized as his memorial throughout this season. And I think it's interesting how the writers decided for the crew to subtly honor Tech instead of dedicating a more emotional scene of the crew reminiscing about him. My theory is that they have already done all of that mourning before the show, since the show takes place a bit of time after season 2. In episode 5, all of the crew is sitting at the table in Pabu discussing Tantis and their plans to get there. Echo mentions Tech and they all have a moment of silence for him. I think they are all still sad about Tech, but they have had time to move on. A couple years ago, one of my dogs had died from cancer, and my entire family was sad about it for a while, but after a month or 2, we moved on. Yes, we still feel sad about him every time someone mentions him, but we have moved on. And I think that this is also true for the Bad Batch, and the mourning process had taken place prior to season 3. I appreciated how Hunter and Wrecker held on to Crosshair's old armor the entire time. It shows their undying loyalty to their crew, and even when Crosshair seemed like he was at a point of no return and the lowest of the low, they still regarded him as their brother. And while we're speaking about armor, I wonder if Echo will ever get his armor back since he left on that science vessel in episode 14. Maybe he will get some new armor in a later show though. Some of the complaints I see for the show are predominantly about the episodes that just seem like a side quest and don't seem to progress the plot too much. I get where people are coming from with this take, from the perspective of having to wait a whole week for an episode that has little impact on the overall plot. I am glad they reduced the amount of these types of episodes this season. But in the 2 previous seasons, these types of episodes were a major issue for the show. In this season, there are only like 2 or 3 of these types of episodes and they still feel like good episodes. I think it is funny how the show calls itself out, though, for these types of episodes when Wrecker says,
Why? Why is there always a huge monster?
These episodes are so nice to have to unwind from an intense episode while still moving the plot, albeit a bit slower, of course. But I don't think filler is an issue at all for Season 3, and I am happy to say that. I feel like Phee is a character who just pops up from time to time when the crew gets desperate. I wish she could have gotten more fleshed out as a character. I think the only reason that she tries to help the Bad Batch is to, in some way, avenge Tech, or Brown Eyes. Honestly, she has been a bit of an annoying character for me, and she seems so one-dimensional and is such a boring character, and she gives me Martez Sisters vibes, honestly. I like how they bring back Rampart into the story, and I like the character chemistry we got when his personality and the rest of the crew's personality mixed. It was a great result. And I was rooting for Rampart's arc to take a 180 and have him become a good guy, but nope, the Rampart we all hated from the previous seasons was alive and well. But that didn't last too long anyways. I'm curious about what is going to happen with the Force-sensitive children who escaped. Will they become Jedi and emerge after the original trilogy, or will they just live normal lives? I think Emory will probably join the Clone Underground movement with Rex and probably take part in the rebellion in some way, shape, or form. I like how the writers show the degree that Tantis had taken a toll on everyone imprisoned there, especially Crosshair. The entire season, his hand shook, which permanently affected his aim. Every time Tantis was mentioned, he was fearful. You can see the look of absolute exhaustion and depression on his face when Omega passes him in the halls on Tantis. If it weren't for Omega's optimistic personality, Crosshair would have never escaped and reunited with his brothers. This same sentiment could have been said for all of the other clones being held prisoner there, by the look of their faces and the looming depression from the lack of purpose they served by being there. And the only purpose they knew before this was fighting in a war that was organized by Palpatine, so of course they're going to be depressed. They're not fighting anymore, they're not being soldiers anymore, they're just being held there and being experimented on. And I appreciate that the writers didn't make it too easy for the Bad Batch to get to the Tantis base. For once, the Imperials are semi-competent and the good guys don't just waltz into their base. And I wonder what they were planning to do with the Zillo Beast had it not been released by Omega. Were they still going with Palpatine's plan of giving Imperial troopers Zillo armor? Imagine how overpowered that would have been. I like how the finale takes such a dark turn so immediately. Crosshair gets his arm chopped off so suddenly, and we just move past that part like it was a normal thing for someone to lose a limb. Maybe this will benefit Crosshair because I believe that was his shaky arm that got cut off, and now he can get a prosthetic arm that will stabilize his aim. Hemlock's death is pretty brutal as well, seeing him get absolutely lit up by blaster fire just like Scorch and falling to his death. We see the Zillo Beast kill squad after squad of Imperials, and we later hear that it had killed I think like 2 platoons of stormtroopers, which is a lot of people. For such a dark finale, it is surprising that all of the crew made it out alive. I think this outcome of the finale is a twist itself because I saw everyone theorizing who might die in this finale, and the fact that they all live surprised most people, I'm sure. Death doesn't always need to happen to make a show good. I mean, I'm sure that's what the edgelords think, who probably wanted to see everybody get brutally slaughtered, but I like this wholesome ending personally. This show's resolution is the definition of the good ending. I love how this show also feeds right into Rogue One, my favorite Star Wars movie, and possibly a couple years before The Empire Strikes Back, shifting from Project Necromancer to Project Stardust, and showing Omega leave Pabu to join the Rebellion sometime in between A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back. I'm gonna give this season a 9 out of 10 and this show as a whole an 8 out of 10. I really enjoyed this show and it is very bittersweet to see it leave us. These are, however, just my thoughts on the show, and I would really like to hear what y'all guys think about the show in the comments down below. Ooh, that kind of rhymed a bit. I appreciate all of you guys getting this far in the video, and if you've enjoyed, please feel free to leave a like on the video, and if you haven't already, subscribe to my channel if you would like to see more of this type of content. I hope you guys have a great May the 4th weekend or week or whatever, even Revenge of the 5th. And this is Narf Boy saying bye. Bye!